Welcome to a presentation on the restoration project plan for West Swan Lake in Emmet County. The project in this presentation is a joint effort between the Iowa DNR Fisheries and Wildlife Bureaus. We appreciate your comments and questions, and the presentation will end with contact information for our offices. West Swan Lake is located in Emmet County, Iowa, and is the last lake in a chain of natural lakes that includes High Lake, Cunningham Slough, Ingham Lake, East Slough, and several other smaller marshes. Like all of Iowa's natural lakes, these lakes were formed approximately 12 to 14,000 years ago by the Des Moines lobe of the Wisconsin Glacier. The chain of lakes and wetlands flows to the north and northeast, eventually going over a dam in the northeast corner of West Swan Lake into Jack Creek, and then to the West Fork of the Des Moines River. Historically, another large sovereign natural lake, East Swan Lake, would have been the last lake in the chain, but it was drained around 1911 when the dam was constructed on the outlet of West Swan Lake. This map was produced by a survey done of the area in the mid-1800s by the General Land Office prior to settlement and shows the extent of this drained lake. Sovereign lakes and rivers in Iowa were made public at the time Iowa became a state to be held in public trust in perpetuity. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources is charged with managing and protecting these water bodies for all Iowans. West Swan Lake is a little under 1,000 acres in size and has a 9-acre island near the middle of the lake. This photo from 2021 shows the green water in the lake caused by intense cyanobacteria or blue-green algae blooms, which are common for West Swan Lake. The lake does contain some stands of hardstem bulrush, likely left over from past management actions in drought periods. Hardstem bulrush is a high-quality aquatic plant that has become uncommon in many Iowa lakes. It requires low water periods to stay healthy. A watershed is defined as the land area that drains to the lake. West Swan Lake has a 14,000-acre watershed that includes the other lakes and sloughs upstream of it. Most of its watershed is row crop agriculture, but the other lakes, wetlands, and public areas make up about 1/3 of the total area draining to the lake. This map shows the watershed boundary in yellow. All land and water inside this boundary flows to the lake and eventually over the West Swan Lake Dam. West Swan Lake has a maximum depth of just under 6 feet and an average depth of just over 3 feet. In Iowa, it's considered a shallow natural lake. All lakes accumulate sediment through time, and a study conducted by Iowa State University in 2012 used sediment cores from the lake bottom to determine the age of sediments in West Swan. They estimated that approximately 9 inches of sediment had accumulated on the lake bottom since the time of settlement. This estimate agrees well with the depth of the lake reported by a survey conducted in 1916. This early report from 1916 comes from a survey completed by the Iowa Highway Commission. The lake was visited on August 5, 1916, and was reported as a pleasing body of open water from 6 to 8 feet in depth. The banks are sharp and in many places covered with natural timber, except in the southwest where the drainage from Mud Lake, now known as Ingham Lake, enters. The report goes on to say, this lake is a favorite hunting ground for people of that part of the state. Fishing is also reported as good, and all the more common varieties of fish are caught. So far as learned, the lake has never been stocked. The report indicates that a petition was filed in 1904 to drain West Swan Lake. The State of Iowa Executive Council gave an option for East Swan Lake to be drained and to preserve West Swan Lake. West Swan Lake has some history of water level management by the Iowa Conservation Commission. In 1954, a drawdown structure was constructed near the dam to allow partial drawdowns to take place. These drawdowns were done annually to manage common carp and improve habitat for birds. This management was successful in increasing aquatic plant life and wildlife use. Hunting was also popular during this time. This aerial photo from the 1950s likely shows one of those early drawdowns. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, many lakes in the region dried up or became very low during a major drought. The water level in Spirit Lake in Dickinson County, for example, was 6 feet below the spillway. exposing a large area of lake bottom around the lake. West Okoboji Lake was 4 feet low during that same period. The photo on this slide shows West Swan Lake in the early 1960s following this severe drought. The low water allowed emergent aquatic plants like bulrush and cattail to grow nearly all the way across the lake. This photo, taken from the boat ramp on the south side of the lake, shows some of the extent of this emergent aquatic plant life. Water quality in the entire chain of lakes improved dramatically, and the sport fishery and hunting opportunities improved for many years following this natural event. This aerial photograph from the same time further shows the result of the drought, allowing emergent aquatic plants to germinate and dominate. Droughts are a natural process which emergent aquatic plant species are dependent on for seed germination. West Swan wasn't the only lake in the chain impacted by the drought. This photo shows the extent of aquatic plant growth at High Lake. In many places around the world, temperate, shallow natural lakes are prone to having poor water quality. Unlike deeper lakes, they are unable to buffer some of the stresses they undergo, such as increased nutrients and sedimentation, flashy watersheds caused by increased drainage, susceptibility to wind and wave energy stirring up the bottom, and invasive species like common carp. The impacts of these stressors keeps aquatic plants from growing, which in turn allows algae to become the dominant plant, turning the water green or turbid. This lack of water quality and habitat prevents fish stockings from doing well and limits other recreational activities. We know that West Swan Lake, like many other shallow natural lakes, has spent time in both the clear water and turbid or green states. Biologists and lake scientists have discovered some of the key mechanisms that explain why a lake can be either clear or turbid, and how certain events can shift the lake between the two states. A lake that is turbid tends to be very stable that way. It can stay in a turbid state, dominated by algae for decades or longer. This stability, oftentimes referred to as ecosystem resilience, is created by all the complex biological and physical interactions that occur beneath the water's surface. Given the right nudge, a natural lake can flip to the clear water state. Just like the turbid state, the lake can become stable and remain clear. The amount of stability is dictated by the lake's watershed, nutrient inputs, biological diversity, and unique physical characteristics. An event that nudges the lake in the other direction upsets this stability and can flip the lake back to the turbid condition. That nudge can come from an event as simple as a common carp reintroduction. To understand this nudge that can push a lake away from the clear water state, we can examine one simple interaction occurring in the lake. Common carp and other fish like fathead minnow and bullheads can alter their environment through their feeding activity. When lots of these types of fish are present, the tiny plankton animal community decreases. Since many of these tiny animals graze on algae, the algae population is left unchecked, allowing their numbers to increase dramatically. On the other hand, a lake with a more diverse fish community and low numbers of carp and other plankton-eating fish allows more zooplankton to grow that then graze on the algae, making the water clearer. This clear water allows sunlight to reach deeper into the water, allowing rooted plants to grow. These plants give zooplankton places to hide and further suppresses algae. Using this lake science and building on past history, lake managers know that significant pressure must be exerted on a lake to push it into the clear water state. Traditional lake management tools like removing a few carp, stocking the lake each year with predators, or doing watershed improvements are rarely enough when used on their own. To push a turbid lake into the clear water state usually takes a significant natural event like a major drought or a winter-induced fish kill severe enough to drastically alter the fishery. Although our region experiences a drought on average every 17 to 20 years, they simply aren't frequent or usually severe enough to overcome the stresses on the lake. Other tools used by lake managers like mechanical carp removal and predator stockings have been used for over a century with only limited success. When working on shallow natural lakes, lake managers around the world have turned to partial or full lake drawdowns. These drawdowns simulate a natural event, allow the problem fishery to be eliminated or replaced, and give rooted aquatic plants a chance to germinate. When these drawdowns are combined with fish barriers to slow the reintroduction of carp, and are coupled with watershed improvements to slow nutrients, the end result of this type of project is a clear water lake with improved stability. In lakes deep enough to sustain fisheries, native fish species are reintroduced as the water refills the lake. Improved habitat and water quality allows native populations to flourish and grow quickly without additional stocking. Healthy and diverse native fish communities add to ecosystem resilience. If common carp or other detrimental species get back into the lake, the healthy native fish community can slow the growth of their population. It's important to remember that any good restoration plan must address some of the other stresses that are present on these lakes. Reducing nutrient inputs, buffering large rain events, improving soil conservation, and addressing shoreline erosion are all ways to improve the stability and sustainability of all the work done in the lake. Implementing watershed management plans that address important conservation priorities are vital to long-term lake restoration success. In the early 2000s, Iowa's work to restore shallow natural lakes and implement some of these strategies was just beginning. Diamond Lake in Dickinson County and West Swan Lake were selected as early candidates for restoration. These lakes were chosen for a variety of reasons, but both were exhibiting low recreational use, very poor water quality, nearly continuous algae blooms, fisheries dominated by common carp and bullheads, and very little aquatic plant life. Biologists took slightly different approaches with each lake. Diamond Lake was temporarily fully dewatered. This allowed emergent shoreline plants like cattail and bulrush to germinate, and the drawdown eliminated the poor fishery. A fish barrier was installed downstream to prevent common carp from getting back in after the restoration, and then the lake was refilled. Yellow perch and northern pike were restocked. The result? Water quality improved dramatically, wildlife populations thrived, waterfowl use went up, the fishery exploded, and recreational use increased substantially. These effects were felt for almost 10 years before there were signs that water quality in the fishery were beginning to slip. At West Swan Lake, biologists drew the lake down about 2.5 feet and did not reset the fishery. Instead, the lake was stocked aggressively with predator fish. The goal was to see if less aggressive methods would be enough to flip the lake. Although there were some growth of emergent plants in shallow water as a result of the drawdown, the common carp population persisted, with water quality and the fishery improving only marginally and for a short time. Since this time, water quality and habitat have been improved in several northwest and north-central Iowa lakes. Although each lake presents unique challenges and characteristics, projects that more closely follow the Diamond Lake model, with partial or full drawdowns, have been the most effective and successful. Even if a project is initially successful, the stability and longevity of a restoration is often dependent on the individual physical characteristics of a lake and its watershed. As an example, Trumbull Lake in Clay County has an extremely large watershed. There are nearly 50,000 acres of land draining to it. That's 50 acres of land for every acre of water. This fact alone makes the lake very unstable in the Clearwater state. A surge of sediment and nutrients from its watershed during a wet spring can disrupt the system enough to flip the lake back to the turbid state. More frequent and aggressive management actions must be taken to keep lakes like Trumbull Lake healthy. Other natural lakes may have very small watersheds that are filled with wetlands and permanent land protections that allow restoration efforts to remain more stable, lasting many years or decades. To stay on top of these changes, lake managers in Iowa monitor a restored lake's water quality and its biology. They watch for physical and biological clues that indicate a lake may be showing signs of stress or that it may be in danger of flipping. If simple interventions can't correct the slip to turbid water, another full renovation project may be necessary to maintain water quality. Building from lessons learned at past projects, a plan for implementing a restoration project at West Swan Lake has been developed. A drawdown of around 3 feet for 1 to 1.5 years will allow beneficial shoreline plants to germinate and begin to grow. The drawdown will also allow managers to renovate the fishery in West Swan Lake and all the wetlands in the watershed. As the lake refills to full pool after the drawdown, it will be restocked with native fish. A common carp barrier near Ingham Lake will prevent carp from moving downstream and slow the return to West Swan Lake, giving a native fishery time to develop. The existing dam on the outlet of West Swan Lake is tall enough to prevent common carp from coming into the lake from downstream under most conditions. A temporary drawdown of 3 feet on West Swan Lake will expose some of the shoreline and shallow bays. This will allow a number of emergent aquatic plant species to germinate and begin growing. This map shows the areas where it is anticipated that emergent aquatic plants will grow. These plants not only provide important habitat, but protect the shoreline from wind and waves, stabilize the lake bottom, and utilize nutrients that would otherwise be used by algae. The major construction components to accomplish these goals have been designed and engineered. A common carp barrier near the outlet of Ingham Lake will be constructed to prevent common carp from re-entering West Swan Lake. The water level control structure on East Slough between Ingham Lake and West Swan Lake will be repaired and upgraded. The water level control structure on West Swan Lake will be replaced, and finally, a channel in West Swan Lake will be excavated to facilitate the drawdown and prevent lake sediments from moving downstream. A key component to the longevity of the West Swan Lake restoration project is protecting the lake and downstream wetlands from common carp. This requires a fish barrier near the outlet of Ingham Lake. Over several months, the design team explored numerous locations and configurations for this component. The most feasible location found is just downstream from the Ingham Lake outlet structure on the existing road crossing. This location has a solid base and is located where the waterway narrows. This location would require that the road between the DNR office and the new barrier be closed to vehicle traffic. Project leaders are pursuing options to allow pedestrians to cross the waterway with a new crossing at the Ingham Lake Dam. Moving to the north, maintenance work will be done to a water level control structure on East Slough between Ingham Lake and West Swan Lake. This structure needs updating and is important for keeping East Slough healthy and getting carp out of the slough. And finally, at the outlet of West Swan Lake, a new water level control structure will be constructed on the north side of the dam. The existing water level control structure can no longer function and isn't accessible on the south side of the abandoned bridge. Because this bay is very shallow, a 1,200-foot outlet channel will be excavated in the lake bottom to allow water from the main part of the lake to reach the water level control structure without washing lake sediment downstream into the creek. Sediment removed from the lake will be taken to a spoil site, with most of the work being accomplished on frozen lake bed. The existing dam is in good condition and will be left in place. This tentative timeline for the project may change based on further adjustments to the construction plan based on public input and things like construction bid prices and weather. The earliest construction could begin would be the spring of 2022. Some construction components are weather dependent, and we anticipate construction will take approximately 1 year. The second page of the timeline shows contingencies to allow for more drawdown time if necessary because of weather delays. It also shows the anticipated timing for fish stocking. The lake will respond quickly after the project is initiated. Numerous shorebirds and other wildlife will immediately begin to take advantage of drawdown conditions and the exposed lake bottom. Waterfowl numbers and nesting use should surge quickly during and just after the project. After fish are stocked, they will grow quickly. Northern pike in these renovated lakes can reach 20 inches in their first year. Quality fishing opportunities should start to be available for panfish species during the second year of growth. It's important to remember that, as with all shallow lake restoration projects, periodic future management actions will be needed to maintain water quality and habitat in West Swan Lake. However, biologists anticipate that this project will have lasting impact and that water quality can be sustained for a decade or more before any major management actions need to be repeated. Thank you for your interest in this important project in Emmett County. We're confident it will have positive impacts for fish and wildlife populations, improve water quality and recreational opportunities, and benefit the local community. Our contact information is listed on the screen, and we're available to help answer your questions and take your comments regarding this project. We look forward to hearing from you.